Most jazz players try to learn tune after tune and it feels endless. But what if one jazz standard held the blueprint for hundreds of others? Master this one song and you'll start recognizing its patterns everywhere. In this video, we'll break down the big takeaways from this essential tune that will unlock hundreds of other jazz standards for you. So the first big takeaway from this tune is the power and the importance of the cycle of fourths in terms of chord progressions. In jazz, the most common chord progression is a 2-5-1, and the most common type of bass root movement is up a fourth or down a fifth. So you can call this a 5-1 chord progression or the cycle of fourths, ascending, cycle of fifths, descending. So this tune has it all over the place. If we look at the beginning of the tune, you'll see that the chord progression goes C minor 7 in concert pitch to F7 to B flat major 7 to E flat major 7. And it keeps going from there, but we'll stop right there and just look at the root movement. So from C up to F is up a fourth or down a fifth if you're going down. From F to B flat is up a fourth or down a fifth. From B flat to E flat is up a fourth or down a fifth. As a matter of fact, this progression keeps going in this tune diatonically. Diatonically is just a fancy word that means in the key. So in the key. If you look at our key signature for this tune looks like it's in the key of B flat major. Some people think of it as being in the key of G minor. Either way, they share a same key signature. G minor is the relative minor of B flat major, which means they share the same key signature. So let's since the first chord progression of the tune is in the key of B flat, let's think of it for now as being in the key of B flat major. So our cycle of ascending fourths or descending fifths continues diatonically, which means in the key. So this next one, E flat up to A or down to A, that is up A sharp 4 or down flat 5. It still is diatonic though, so we're staying in the key of B flat. If we keep going up in fourths, C up to F, F up to B flat up to E flat up to A. This is the next fourth above E flat that's still in the key of B flat. Then we keep going. The A goes up a fourth to D, the D goes up a fourth to G, and then when we get to the end of our first ending, the G goes again up a fourth to C. So the A section of this tune is a perfect model of the full diatonic cycle of going up in fourths. And so our root movement is... And we're back to where we started. Now I'll go so they're not all ascending, so it sounds more like a bass line and less like I'm just going up in fourths endlessly. So it sounds like this. Now we're back to where we started. So the diatonic cycle of fourths is really common in jazz. Not every tune will do the full cycle like this tune does, but we'll get fragments of it a lot, especially, of course, our 2-5-1, which we see right here in the opening 4 measures of this song. Okay? So as a chord progression, this is how that cycle sounds. And now we're back to where we started. Okay, so the first takeaway is if you want to master jazz tunes, master your cycle of fourths and especially your 2-5-1s. And so the way to practice this would be to start by practicing the root movement. Right, get used to the root movement. Then arpeggiate all of those chords, right? Back to where I started. And then work on your 2-5-1 vocabulary. If you get comfortable with your 2-5-1s, you're going to unlock so many other jazz tunes because jazz is built around the 2-5-1 chord progression and this cycle of ascending fourth or descending fifth as a root movement and as our most common chord progression. Okay, the big takeaway number 2 from this tune is the power and the importance of pivot chords. A pivot chord is a fancy way of saying a chord that is shared by 2 separate key centers that allows you to smoothly transition from one key center to the next. The musical term for that is modulate. When you change keys, it's called a modulation. So we modulate when we change keys. So this tune, if we go to bar 4 of the tune, is a wonderful example of using two pivot chords to transition from the first key center of the tune to the second key center of the tune. So the tune, as you can see, starts in the key of B flat major, and we have a 2-5-1, and then we go to the 4 in B flat major, and then where we're headed to is this minor 2-5-1 in the key of G minor here, and that is the relative minor of B flat major, which is the fancy way of saying that G minor shares the same key signature as B flat major. So how do we transition from the key of B flat major in the first 3 bars to the key of G minor in these bars right here, 5, 6, 7? Well, the answer is we actually have 2 chords that can both function as pivot chords. This E flat major 7 in bar 4 and the A minor 7 flat 5, which you can also call it an A half diminished, in bar 5. So those 2 chords are pivot chords. What that means is that they both are diatonic, which is that term again that means in the key. They're diatonic chords in both of our keys that we're playing in. So E flat major is the 4 chord, the diatonic 4 chord in the key of B flat major. So if you just go through your chords in B flat major, right? When you get to that 4 chord, 1, 2, 3, 4, E flat major 7 is our diatonic 4 chord, right? And the A minor 7 flat 5 chord here are our A minor 7 flat 5 or A half diminished chord. That's that diatonic 7th chord in the key of B flat, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So both of these chords, the E flat major 7 and the A minor 7 flat 5, belong to the key of B flat major. But both of these chords also belong to the key of G minor, because in our minor mode harmony, we have our 1 chord and our 2 is half diminished. And so there's my 2 chord. So this A minor 7 flat 5 is both the 7 chord in the key of B flat major, and it's the 2 chord in the key of G minor. Similarly, this E flat major 7, like we already said, is the 4 in the key of B flat major. It is the flat 6 key in the key of G minor. So if we keep going in our G minor, right, we've got our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's our diatonic 6 chord. So what is so cool about this is that the chord progression seamlessly tricks you as it transitions from the key of B flat major to the key of G minor. Because we start very clearly in the key of B flat major with our 2, 5, 1, and then we go to the 4 chord, and it still sounds like we're in B flat major, and we go to this A half diminished chord, and it still sounds like we could maybe be in B flat major, but by the time we get to this D7 chord, right, that D7 chord really tells us we're no longer in the key of B flat major, because that D7 chord has an F sharp as the 3rd of the chord. So by the time we get to the D7 chord, our ears have been triggered, where the music is signaling to us that we're definitely no longer in the key of B flat major because of that F sharp being an important chord tone over the D7 chord. And then when you back up, your brain retrospectively is looking back at the music and saying, at what point did we end up in the key of G minor? And it's kind of cool, it's kind of ambiguous, because again, the E flat major 7 chord and the A flat minor 7 flat 5 chord both belong to both keys. So it's a cool way to dovetail the major chord progression leading into the minor chord progression with that overlap of those 2 pivot chords that could function as diatonic chords in either B flat major or G minor. Okay. Item number 3 of why this is such a killer tune that's going to help you to unlock hundreds of other tunes is, as you study this tune, it really helps you to understand the importance and the prominence of the major versus the relative minor key centers. So, if we go back to our lead sheet and we're looking at the chord progression of this tune, as we can see, what's highlighted in blue here and these chords right here, the very first chord progression of the tune is a 2-5-1 in the key of B flat. And then we also add the 4 here. So we're clearly in the key of B flat major, and then like we talked about, the relative minor of B flat major is G minor. So we're going to the relative minor. Now, the cool thing about this is that even though they share the same key signature, if you really want to emphasize the difference between these two, you can really elevate your jazz playing by changing one really important note, and it's going to be the third of this D7 chord. Because when that third of that D7 chord comes in the harmony, which is an F sharp, it really shifts a change in the harmony and the sound of the tune. So up until that point, right, when we're in the key of B flat, we're going 2, 5, 1, 4, 7, which is, like we just talked about, could be one of our transition chords. Now we can think of this as a 2, as a minor 2, 5, 1. This, up to that point, we could still be in the key of B flat major, so you can still play B flat major vocabulary for that whole chord progression. Until we get to here. Once we get to that D7 chord, we've now got an F sharp, and so suddenly the scale B flat major doesn't sound as good because B flat major has an F natural in it, but the music is telling us we need to play an F sharp because F sharp's an important note in that chord. And so what we can do is think about how, or rather, what's the scale that's going to help us get from B flat major to G minor? And the best answer is G harmonic minor. So for the first 4 bars, I'm going to be thinking B flat major for the most part. B flat major, B flat major, B flat major, B flat major. Once I get to this A minor 7 flat 5 or A half diminished chord, I'm going to switch to G harmonic minor. And that is going to help me define these two key centers. And so what that might sound like is something like this. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So hopefully you heard for the first 4 bars, I was only playing notes from concert B flat major. With maybe a couple chromatic passing tones, but I avoided that for the most part. And then when I got to that second 4-bar phrase, I switched to my G harmonic minor concert. And that really signals to the ear that we're in a new key center. So you're going to want to practice your ability to switch from the major to the relative minor. And as improvisers, we accomplish that switch by changing our scale choice from being primarily the major scale, maybe with some chromaticism if you want to have some chromaticism in there, but primarily the major scale. And then when you go to the minor key center with our 2-5-1 in the minor mode, you're going to switch to the tonic harmonic minor, meaning the harmonic minor of the key that you're headed to. So again, in this case, 2-5-1, 4 in B flat major, we're going to play B flat major for those first 4 bars. And then for the minor 2-5 in bars 5, 6, and 7, we're going to switch to our G harmonic minor scale. Okay, so takeaway number 4 for this tune is the power of melodic sequences. This tune is Autumn Leaves, and the melody of this tune goes like this at the beginning. So, what is a melodic sequence? Well, you just heard one, so let's describe it. A melodic sequence is where you play a short melodic idea and then you repeat that same idea but starting on a different note, starting on a different pitch level. And so the power of sequences cannot be understated in jazz improvisation. I love playing eighth note lines, and we all love hearing great jazz musicians play eighth note lines. But running eighth note lines are only one tool in our toolkit as jazz improvisers. What really has the biggest impact are things that the audience can latch onto. The audience can latch onto a sequence, because the cool thing about a melodic sequence is that it plays around with our brain's expectations in a very fun way. When an audience member hears a melody and then they hear what sounds like the same melody but starting on a different note, it's very exciting because they can hear and understand the relationship, and they can follow along with you as you take a short melodic motif like this tune does, and you develop it using sequences. So a big takeaway from the melody of this tune is to incorporate melodic sequences into your solo. So another version of that, different from the melody, might be if I was playing this tune, I might do something like this. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So hopefully you heard I started with this little kind of idea of, right? And I took that idea and I started playing around with that idea, starting on different notes within the scale, trying to help me imply the chord changes as well. It could be even simpler than that, though. A sequence could be as simple as something like, or so your imagination is the limit, but you should take advantage of the power of melodic sequences as a tool in your toolkit to help you build exciting, effective melodic ideas in your solos. Another huge takeaway from this tune is the power of good voice leading. Voice leading is the term that musicians use when they're talking about having a clear target note that you want to land on when you get to a certain chord in the form. The melody of this tune really models really well how to target certain chord tones. So the melody starts like this, and that first note that it's trying to target is the third of the C minor 7 chord when you land on the first chord of the tune. Right? And then it sits on that note, right? When the tune goes to the 5. And so it's a flat third on the C minor chord that becomes our flat 7 on the F7 chord, that concert E flat. And then the next landing point of the melody is there, which is the third of the B flat. When the chord changes, becomes the 7th of the E flat. And so it continues in that manner. The melody is clearly picking chord tones it wants to land on, and it's picking really good chord tones. It's picking chord tones that are common notes between the different chords, as we just saw. The first note that the melody lands on starts out as the minor third and then holds over into the next chord and becomes the flat 7. So clever improvisers can accomplish more with less. You don't always have to play a lot of notes to build a great melody and to build a great solo. But when you do get choosy with your notes, you want to pick notes to land on that are good, effective chord tones, and thirds and 7s are always great choices. So another great takeaway from this tune is to focus on chord tones you want to land on and pick a good chord tone and build a melody that helps you land on that chord tone. So those are some of the big takeaways from Autumn Leaves and why you should study this tune, because it will help you unlock hundreds of other tunes. If you need more help with topics like this and your goal is to get better at playing jazz, check out our Learn Jazz Standards Inner Circle. We learn a new jazz standard every month there, and you'll get access to all of our jazz courses on anything you need to know, as well as our community of like-minded musicians, so you're not going it alone. Click the link in the description below to learn more. And if you found this video helpful, I have another video link on the screen that you're going to definitely enjoy. As always, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, remember to give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.